welcome back to Desk Talks. I'm Chase, and I'm joined here again today with Rob.
What
We
up?
were talking about what up? We were talking about what we're going to do for this show today, and we just kept on going back and forth, back and forth. And finally, we said, what do military members want when they're getting out of service?
Yeah.
And I think that
I,
was
that,
just a go ahead.
well, I was going to say, that's exactly the question. And you're right. We did go back and forth, and then we started looking at data because I'm a
Well,
nerd.
I was about to say because we're nerds,
Yeah.
so we
I
started
don't,
combing through data.
yeah. Well, I'm curious. I was curious, what are military, because you and I have been out. Let's see, we've been out for eight going on 9 years now. And just like being any job, any career, any profession, if you're away from it for more than a year, you're probably out of touch a little bit with what's going on. And then you, Chase, posed the question of, well, what are military members? What are people getting out? What are they looking for? Like, what are they trying to do? Because they're normally, what'd you say? They're like 26 years of age or younger or something like that, right?
Yeah, I said, well, because I was using the data that I was told, right?
Yeah,
Whenever I
sure.
was serving and whenever I was working in, operations. I mean, this is aggregate data that we used to pull, right? So like
Hmm.
we found out that our average service member at this time, was this age. And I was like, extrapolating the data, I was like, well, whenever you get out there with your first enlistment, right? I mean, what did those people want? You and I were, career, both were medically
Yep.
retired and wanted to do 20 plus, go
Yep.
as far as we could. And, but that was never a thought, I guess, that I had, at that young, if you came in straight out of high school, right? I mean, you're going to be what, 22 to 25, when you get done, 22 to 24, I think is what I said, 4 to
Yeah.
6 year
So
pump.
what was the question of, like, what's after service? That was never a thought. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. For me, it wasn't.
Yeah. Yeah.
I
I
mean,
completely understand that. Yeah.
it was retirement. Like,
Yep. Yep.
like
You
I,
and I talked about that all the time.
yeah, that's future. That was it. And I hate to say this is how immature I was, but I used to say, that's future Chase's problem. Let him figure it out. Like this is, this is, I've got a good plan. I'm going to work this plan right now. And when we get closer, I'll start zeroing in on that target. But right now I've got 25 and 50-meter targets in front of me that need to get knocked
Yeah.
down. That's that's 1,000-yard target. I'm not even, I can't even reach out and touch that yet. That's
Yeah. I do. You sound like me looking at the dishwasher at 9 o'clock at night. It's future Rob's problem.
nobody likes that guy anyway.
Yeah. Do it anyway because you can't wake up to a dirty kitchen. But yeah.
That's
But I mean,
right. My therapist taught me a thing for my ADD, which is don't put it down, put it away. So
yeah.
I have to recite that mantra as I come in the house, not to not to stack, because I said, man, I want to quit stacking stuff. I want to change that behavior.
Yeah, man.
Don't put it down, put it away. Don't put it
Facebook
down, put it away.
Facebook Reels taught me the same thing. Don't put it down, put it away.
your therapist,
It's my
Facebook
therapist,
Reels.
my Facebook therapist. Yep. Yep. Where I think 80% of people get their medical diagnoses now anyway is just Facebook Reels. But going back,
Oh, that makes me sad. That's a sad statement.
I'm just saying, I don't know what the analytics look like on that, but I'd be just thrilled to take a look at them. But it goes going back to the question of what do military service members want. In my research, I almost feel like I'm a little out of touch because from what you said, and I agree with you, it's what I heard, and the people serving around me, like, we're in our mid-20s. We're in
Yeah.
our mid-20s. There's not a whole lot of thought, and I hate to say it, but there wasn't a whole lot of thought into, well, what's next? Was I going to school? I was going to college whenever I
Well,
was on active duty, but I didn't think about what does the next career move look like.
there you go. I think I was more focused on what is the next procedural step instead of where do I want to be
Yeah.
and then backwards tracking from there. Right. and then
Yeah.
finding those procedural steps. I think I was just looking for a procedural step, like what's next,
You're
right?
doing
And
your
you and I've
job.
done that,
Yep.
right? Like people say, "Well, I got to get a job." Well, yeah, but what are the steps to get to that job? Is that the job you want?
Yes, I've heard that all the time. I need a job. You don't need a job, you need a career. Those are two very different things.
Yeah, well, I mean, sometimes you do need a job,
Oh,
right?
yeah. Well,
You
I've
need a
been there.
job.
Yeah.
Bills got to get paid. I need a job right now, please.
Yep. Yep.
I've been there.
I've
I've
been
been
there.
there. I've gone around and asked people in the community before, like, "Hey, I'm available."
Yeah. Turn that 13.25 an hour into a career. It happens.
Yeah,
It
yeah, and you
happens.
just kinda dig in, right? I mean, you dug in, you put the
Yep.
time in, right? I mean,
Yep.
that's a sacrifice in itself,
Well, I mean,
you
you
know?
you take that back to whenever we were in the military. I was very similar to you. It wasn't so much thinking about what's my next career. It was what do I have to do? What marks do I have to hit for the next promotion? That was my
Yes.
thought process. What do
Yep.
I have to do to hit the next rank? Or if I wanted to go warrant officer, what are the requirements for that? I need at the time, I
So
believe, needed an associate's degree and
yeah.
just a
So I
million
can
other
get
steps.
so I can get more rank so I can spend more time in the office so my wife could be more comfortable. That's what I was thinking about.
I mean, I was just, man, it'd be nice to show up to work in civilian clothes and everybody not question it. That was that was more my thought process, but you know, it is what it is. But looking at the data that I shared with you before we jumped on, I was under the assumption that the average for an enlisted person, that the average service term was probably somewhere around 3 to 6 years, somewhere in between there. That is not the case.
That is
The
not the case.
the
I thought that
average length of service is 15 years for enlisted personnel. Like
that's impressive.
that was mind boggling to me. But you know, I read it, and I mean, I understand all this data is aggregated. Like our experiences, our conversation that we had right before we jumped on, our experiences. We're working with people in their mid-20s. That's whenever
Right.
everybody got out. That was our experience, which
Yes.
is just a conversation you and I've had a million times. Our military experience, we served in two very different, arms or cores of the
Two different
military.
worlds. Yep.
We really, really did. So your average person now is getting out. Like, I'm thinking about this. The average person now is getting out with a family, because I think it said this is all based off of the Pew Research Institute data. The average person is getting out at the age of between 34 and 36, with 15 years of enlisted service with two children.
Yep.
58.4% of the enlisted corps
Was it
have
3
a family.
dependents?
Yeah. Yeah. And so, what do they want? What do y'all want whenever you get out of service? What's the next step? And I'm not trying
Yeah.
to take us back to
Are
a
you looking
previous.
to stay in your career field that like if you were in the military and let's just say that you're in the Air Force and you were a I don't know, what do you do in the Air Force? I mean, are you part of the maintenance? I mean, you have every other job that we have in every other service,
Sit in
right?
air
So,
conditioning in a leather chair.
yeah, let's
Says the Intel guy.
I know, Chuck. I was about to say, dude, hold on. Who are you
And I'm
talking
still
about,
doing
bro?
it, baby.
You're still doing
I'm
it.
still doing it.
Look at you. Look at you. Are you are you Navy? Where you are pick a job, doesn't matter,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Do you want to continue that service whenever you get out? I mean, you've done it for 15 years, right? Is this something
Yep.
that or do you want to start something new? That's scary. A lot of veterans, as we are hearing in our space, I'm hearing that they want to be entrepreneurs. Like
Yep.
they're doing 15, and this is officer, enlisted, warrant. It doesn't matter where they come from. You got strong willed, very independent, very, very hard charging people that want to get out there and do the thing.
They're very educated.
Uh, that was another statistic which I thought was absolutely fascinating.
Yeah.
Like, what was it? 92% post 9/11. Was it 92% come with am I saying that right? 92% had a high school diploma?
So the data was, which I find interesting. This is the most up to date data I could find. Just
Right.
like quick Google search, right? Um, this data was based in 2009. Again, Pew Research Institute. It was 98% of the enlisted force. This is
There you
across
go.
all branches. 98% had a high school diploma plus some college.
And that was
98%.
that was just for our enlisted, right?
Just enlisted. Yep.
And then our officer corps had something like
It was lower.
20 something percent that had an advanced degree.
No. So that was higher. I think it was 36
30
percent of the officer corps had an advanced degree. 3% of the enlisted corps had an advanced degree. 52% of the enlisted corps had an undergraduate degree. Like
right,
there's some good data.
and I mean, did they? I didn't look at that data. Now, whenever did you see if they counted warrant officers in with the enlisted corps,
Officers,
or did they consider them in with the officers?
officers, as part of the
So,
officers.
and I think that's wildly fascinating because up to like 2015, you also saw where like a warrant officer did not have to have a college education, college degree in order to be a warrant officer prior to 2015. I think that is a new requirement.
I believe so.
Desk talkers out there,
Let us
we
know,
couldn't find that, so let us know if
please.
you're in the know. We are very interested in that, and I'm sure our audience, active duty service members, if you are listening, that might be a viable track for you, especially after 8 years of being in your MOS. I think is the recommended. I think they said you can start applying at 5 years for most MOSs, but 8 years is recommended. Is really where they want you
Well,
kind of seasoned.
I'm curious if that's going to change too. Now that we're no longer, you know, quote unquote, you know, in
Yeah,
wartime.
we got skinny again, didn't we?
And so,
Yeah, our military member got our military has got real
and
skinny.
I'm curious too, and that's another conversation. I'm not trying to take us down a rabbit hole, but I would love to hear from people listening to this, individuals. I was right on the tail end, so I joined the army in 2010 to 2016. Um, very much still during wartime, but towards the end of my career, we were seeing drawdowns um, but I'm curious from everyone who's listening's perspective. If you served during wartime and then in garrison out of wartime, what was that like? I'm dying to know because I can tell you from
Okay,
my experience
I
having
would
been.
love to have desk talkers. If you're out there, I'm with you, Rob. I'm sorry. Put a pin in that for just a second. I would love to have a '90s came in the '90s,
Yeah.
right, and lived that garrison life, and then also had some post 9/11, right? So that
Hmm.
we could have that perspective, and then I would love to have somebody that joined because of 9/11, right? Who did their career and got out before the before the war ended, because there was a
Yeah.
lot of people that
Yeah.
did.
Yeah.
And then I would love to have them sit down with us who kind of came in the middle, who kind of floated in the middle to
Yeah.
the end.
Yep.
So maybe we could have a conversation of what that looked like, because that's potentially three different looks of the same organization that looked
Yeah.
completely different in three different phases.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
now,
that's, yeah, that's immediately where my mind went. Is the now, because the military looks. I mean, I'm sure functionality wise, it's very very similar, but it looks, just from friends who are still in active duty, it looks completely different than the military that we were in. Um, but I am curious because I went from Korea back to the states in garrison life. Oh, it was awful. It was so awful. Like I get it now why people are like, "Oh my god, send me. I'll go, be with a forward deployed unit.
yeah,
I'll go overseas
I'll
to
be
a
an augmentee.
non-combat deployment. Like
Yep,
I'll do
I'll go to
anything
Kuwait. I'll go anything. Yep.
because the ridiculousness of being in garrison, it is so tedious."
Well, it's like a lot of my Navy friends say that their shore time is very much appreciated. Whenever they get shore time.
Yeah.
But they are ready for shore time to complete by the time that like it's a good cycle. Those guys that were able to do it. They said about 3 years is all they could take of the garrison, and then about 3 years is all they could take at sea. Whenever
Yeah.
they're You know, and I get that. I mean, as someone who served in 2 branches, I mean, I didn't, I was in 29 Palms, California for my Marine Corps, stuff, and, and I loved it. I loved my time in it. I mean, met a lot of fascinating people, went to a lot of fascinating places, some things you can't unsee, some things you can't unhear. But yeah, and I do feel a little disconnected only because I'm not in my youth anymore. I'm not in my 20s. I'm not my early 30s anymore. So what are you looking for whenever you come out? I know whenever I was transitioning out, I had a small. I mean, we talked about this before. I had 2 small kids and a wife. I had 3 dependents, that I had to worry about. So
Yeah.
my needs and my wants were completely different, right? I wanted a career. I needed to pay some bills.
Well, the data would show you fall in line with what individuals getting out now. You are a good example of what they're looking for. Age wise, whenever you got out of the military, you were very close to the average now. You're right. You and I both. We are right in that average getting out with 2 children, and a spouse. And if everybody's needs are the same as you and I's needs at the time, got to pay bills.
Well,
Got to
you find
do.
out, you live long enough, you realize that, everybody's needs are about the same, right? I think
Yep.
that's one thing that you could say with time. Like, when I was younger, I thought that, everybody's different. Everybody's needs. Well, yeah, degrees, right? Like, then we're talking about degrees. As you scope out, you realize that everybody's needs are kind of the same. Doesn't matter where you live in the country, right? So whenever you leave the military, you leave a career, okay? Whether that be 4 years, you did 4 years, or whether you did 20 plus years, your needs are going to be, common.
Well, as I'm listening to you talk, I want to do something. A little call to action for our, as you like to call them, our desk talkers. If you're listening to this, do me a favor, please, please, and do your brothers and sisters a favor. Uh, let's put up a poll on Facebook, Instagram, drop it in comments on social media. I'll put up a poll on Spotify. But I want to know how long you served, if you served, and then if you want to be a part of the conversation, because I'm dying to know. I really am dying to know. Like, I want to speak with someone who got out in the past, I don't know, what, 2 years? And I want to genuinely hear what their needs, what they felt like their needs were when they left service, compared to what you and I've talked about a few times now, and we're talking about now, what our needs were. Uh, because I'm curious that all that data that we shared is from 2009. I haven't
Yeah.
found any from 2024 or even 2023. So let's do it on our own. Let's figure it
Yeah.
out, and see where people are, and then we can just kind of keep rolling with that trend. I'm not trying to end it, but it was a thought as you were talking. Like, we really do. I am out of touch, like you said. I feel a little out of touch.
Just a little
Almost a
bit though.
decade out of surface.
Well, right. So, and I think that's where, like, I want to say, like, yes, I do feel out of touch, but at the same time, like, these are common core problems. At the same, and then at the same turn of the cheek, I mean, the working force is changing. I mean, we've talked about it. I mean, how you are educated and how you get into the working force is changing.
Yep.
The pathway is changing.
Yep.
So, I would love to hear from a military member that's gotten out in the last 2 years, like what your transition was, right? And what they were telling you and what you're finding to be true.
Yep. So this desk talk will post tomorrow, tomorrow or next week.
Well,
Let's
it'll
see. Today's
definitely
the
post
25th.
9/26.
Okay.
So,
Today's the 25th. I think what a little bit of shop talk here for just a second. I think what we should do is throw some polls up on social media,
yep.
maybe for the rest of this week and maybe continuing on into next week. And I'm almost down on my knees begging because I'm dying to know so bad. Just our listeners, where you are in life. Whenever you had kind of that transition point, even if you weren't in the military, we all have a transition
We
point in
all
life.
transition.
All of us.
Yeah.
What did you feel like you needed? Right? Like, we're talking job, a job to pay the bills, or were you looking for a career? Did you go back to school? At what point in time did you go back to school? I don't know how we capture that in the
Yeah.
polls.
Did
Maybe
you
that's a
find,
comment, but I'm curious.
yeah, did you have any financial struggles or were your struggles other than financial?
Yeah.
Because there's a lot of people that I've talked to recently that finances aren't the struggle. It's time resource. It's resource management is
Yep.
the struggle.
Yeah.
And that's a good position to be, but it presents its own set of complications.
Yeah.
And we get that. We would love to hear that from you guys. Maybe we can figure that out internally.
Yeah. Yeah. We will. We will.
Well, I'm
But
down with the pollster there, buddy. That sounds good.
I love
Um,
it. I love it. Can I jump in real quick?
yeah.
I'm going to do something that we haven't done and that we did not talk about before we started today. But you gave me a great idea. I want to start a weekly segment shouting out our biggest supporters on social media, and I want to reward that support. Um, and so I won't say his first name, but Mr. Sample, you, sir, are an absolute winner for this past week, and I can't tell you enough how much we appreciate you here. And if you do, anybody, I'll piggyback off of what Chase said. This is my best impersonation of a command sergeant major. Let me piggyback off of what Chase said. If you do join us on a podcast, ever, period, you will get some free DES swag. It might be a shirt, it might be a hat, and we will get that to you promptly. But you'll get a shout out. So
it might be a sticker you can put on your water bottle.
No, I'll do something. I promise. The value of the gift. The value of the gift will be $20+ rest assured. But I think we should do that. I think we should shout out our social media supporters. But Mr. Sample, you absolutely win this week. So hopefully we can get something coming your way pretty soon.
Oh yeah, we'll reach out. We'll get your information. Well, thank you so much, Desk Talkers, for starting this conversation with us today of what are veterans looking for. We're so excited and proud to say that we have some partners on here, and I think that Mr. Sample, I would say, would be a partner. By liking and sharing and interacting and giving us comments and feedback. So we want to say thank you to all you that have been here with us. Continue to interact with us. We'll give you shout outs. We'd love to have you on the podcast, Mr. Sample. If you're out there and you want to be on our podcast, we'll still give you your free bumper sticker. We'll also throw
it's
in
not
a t-shirt.
sticker
if you want to come on the show. Well, there again, Desk Talkers, thank you so much for being here with us this week. We look forward to our next conversation. Until next time.